Alright, so let's get back into this. The drawbacks of mediated communication. Most of these I'm sure you're familiar with, not just from reading the chapter, but also just in your everyday lives. So, superficial relationships, you don't really get a deeper understanding a lot of times. Yeah, sometimes, as we mentioned, you can get hyper personal really, really quickly in a dating relationship, but also superficial relationships can be formed in the way of friendships. And superficial relationships aren't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's um, just part of that like support group that you have. If you join those support groups, there's superficial relationships. But then also there is that idea that the more friends you have on Facebook or followers you have on Instagram or whatever, the more popular you seem to be. But then that sort of changes sometimes, where some people who aren't celebrities have this huge, enormous amount of friends that they couldn't possibly actually be friends with, and they kind of seem a little superficial in the way that they are just kind of collecting people. So those superficial relationships that don't really amount to much. They're just there as an extra number, if you will. Social isolation. While mediated communication can be good for shyer people, it can also make people, especially shyer people, more isolated and less likely to be able to form actual relationships with people, especially when they actually go outside and into the real world. They might not be able to have that same connection because they might be, really active socially, but then once they get out into the public, they don't know what to say or don't know what to do or don't know how to form uh, a face-to-face relationship with someone. You saw that side article, which was called Alone Together, I believe, and that kind of goes on to the fact that um, social isolation plus relational deterioration. Deterioration. Sorry, I cannot speak today. Um, go hand in hand when it comes to the drawbacks of mediated communication. So going into relational deterioration. See, I can actually say it. Um, that is a lot of the fact that sometimes your relationships that are in person, like the people you live with, can actually deteriorate, sorry, um, because you're spending so much time looking at your phone that you're not paying attention to the relationships that are right there. And while communication can be a good thing when it comes to relationships that are farther apart, like long distance, as we discussed, when you're on your phone playing games and you're ignoring your spouse or your family who are right next to you, that can make your relationships with them deteriorate. Deception. You can lie about who you are on the internet. I know, that's so strange, right? It's called catfishing a lot of times, but which I'm sure you're familiar with the TV show, maybe. Um, but yeah, you can lie who you are. Deception. You can say that you are a fit 30-year-old man and you're a weightlifter, and then you could actually be like a 60-year-old woman living in a basement somewhere, just trying to be creepy. You can lie who you are. You can be deceiving, and that happens a lot, a lot, a lot. So the last one, which kind of can go hand in hand with deception too, is stalking and harassment, which also is considered cyberbullying sometimes. So I'm sure a lot of you have gotten those friend requests on Facebook or followers on Instagram of people you don't know, and hopefully you reject them. But that can lead to a lot of cyberbullying and harassment and stalking. Someone's really interested in you and they start stalking you, and that can get really unsafe. But then harassment and cyberbullying usually is done by someone that you know in your real day-to-day life, and that can happen. Just as bullying in person can happen, they can go find your site and say really mean things to you or post mean things on your page and just full-on harass you, which of course can be reported, and you should report that, guys. Make note. That is one of the many drawbacks of mediated communication, and it's definitely one of the more dangerous ones. So influences of mediated communication. This is actually really interesting on the fact that many different aspects of who you are as a person can influence how you communicate on mediated forms of communication, but also face-to-face, if you will, but this is more focused on the mediated communication. So gender. Women usually use personal pronouns, hedge phrases, emotion words. Men are more likely to use large words, nouns, swear words, and object references. So breaking that down, women are more likely to, use emotional words and heart shapes and use words like love and baby and cute and just like really kind of sweet emotional words, while men are more likely to use complicated terms and nouns and swear a lot and reference objects. Age. Digital natives versus digital immigrants. Channel preferences, topics of discussion. So first, digital natives and digital immigrants. So digital natives are people like you guys who haven't had a life without digital media and mediated communication. You guys were born into it. And digital immigrants versus that, you guys all communicate. We all, as generations, communicate in different ways. What we find as more popular and more preferential when we choose how to communicate, whether it's Instagram, Facebook versus texting or phone calls. We have different digital communications or mediated communication, which we prefer due to our age, which can also go into channel preferences. But then topics of discussion change too. The younger you are, the more likely you're talking about school and things that happen in school and TV shows. And then as you go into get a little older, you start talking about college and bars and drinking and socializing. And then as you get older, middle age and older, you're talking about your kids or your grandkids and about politics a lot of times, or about sending thoughts and prayers to people and such like that. Those are the more common topics of discussion. So competence in social media. Again, pretty obvious, right? Fostering positive relationships under the competence. Respect for others' needs for undivided attention. Keep your tone civil. Don't intrude on bystanders. So we have this list of rules that we kind of made without saying that we made them, especially on like Facebook pages, that when it comes to social media, there's some rules, that unspoken rules that you just follow to keep positive relationships with these people. So respect others' need for undivided attention, keep your tone civil, and then don't intrude on bystanders. And then protecting yourself. The younger you are, the more likely you are, well, maybe not the younger you are, but there comes an age where you're like, okay, I'm going to protect myself more than others might. So a lot of older generations, or people my age and older, are more likely to be really savvy about securing our social media pages so that people we don't want to see certain aspects of our lives that we post on social media will not see them, and also to keep us safe from people that we don't want finding us or seeing information without being our friends or accepted as friends. And we're also more careful about what we post. So think before you post, verify what you see online, and balance mediated and FaceTime. This meaning that obviously think before you post. So as older you get, a lot of times you think more about what you're about to post due to jobs and friendships and whatnot, but mostly jobs, so that any employers won't see you posting things. And then, of course, even if you delete it, like I said before, it's still there. It's still there. You might not be able to see it, but someone can find it. And then verify what you see online, such as articles. A lot of times there's so many false articles that people just continue posting without checking on that. Make sure you're checking that. Fake news versus real news. And then balance mediated and FaceTime. So balancing the time between how much you're online and communicating and how much face-to-face time you're having with the same people or people at all. Okay. So that's the end of the Chapter 2 PowerPoint. Make sure that you're, when you're reading the chapters, you're also reading those little side articles, like Alone Together, because those will be referenced on quizzes, as you've seen already in the Chapter 1 quiz, I'm sure. Hopefully you've taken that by now. If you haven't, go take it. So that is the end of that, and that is the end of today's videos. So please make sure that you are reading the chapters, taking the test, and of course, turning in that stage fright activity today to do Google Classroom, which is that noise activity sheet that I referenced yesterday that is due in classroom today. So make sure you are turning that in. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.